Welcome to Beyond with Ben Bobo. We're coming to you out of Newport Beach, California today. We have a very special guest. Deidre Pujols is first and foremost a woman of faith. Wife of famed baseball player Albert Pujols and mother of 5. She and her husband founded the Pujols Family Foundation, which seeks to help those living with Down syndrome here at home and to improve the lives of impoverished people in the Dominican Republic. She also created Open Gate International, which provides vulnerable individuals with the knowledge, skills, and abilities to obtain meaningful employment while empowering them to develop a happy and healthy lifestyle. In 2017, Deidre and her husband Albert founded Strike Out Slavery, an initiative that aims to provide spread awareness about modern-day slavery and help an international network of nonprofit organizations rally against it. Deidre, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You know, as I read your story, your backstory, what really stood out and was really poignant for me was the faith that you've exhibited at different stages in your life. And I just want to get an idea, where did your bedrock faith in God start from or originate from?
Well, growing up, I was born to 2 teenage parents who both have come from the Catholic faith. And so that's how they raised me for the majority of the start of my life. And when I was a teenager, I was invited to go to more of like a non-denominational environment, for church. And they were reading their Bible, and they were really trying to teach like life application and how to incorporate what God says about who we are and how we should live and all these things. And so it was around 16 years old that I decided to kind of dive into a deeper relationship and pull away from the religiosity, but just go into a deeper relationship with who Christ was and is for me.
Nice. And a lot of people try that journey, and sometimes are successful, and sometimes the dogma of a religion, and you could see it in any religion, can really take over. And so the idea that you're able to pull back away from the dogma a little bit and go on a spiritual level in that connection to God is pretty special. Yeah. So as you approach the birth of your first daughter, and this was really powerful, I thought. You knew that in the birth of your first daughter, she was a Down syndrome child. Mm-hmm. How did your faith prepare you for that reality? Because at the time you're a single mom, mm-hmm. With this tremendous responsibility, and when you have non-Down syndrome children, it's a little different in terms of the effort and the energy and what's required to raise. How does your faith play a role in that experience?
Well, that's a great question, and that really is where my full-on faith journey started. I was 20 years old and found out that I was pregnant, and the guy was nowhere, in my life. And so the way that I best explain it is that while I was pregnant for 9 months with a live child in, my stomach, I was also impregnated with a spiritual seed. And so while I was pregnant with her, I just fell in love in a new way with Christ. And I began to really read the Bible. You got to read it to know whether you want to agree with it or not. And I just started reading it, and I liked what it said about me, and I liked what it said about the Lord, and how we were supposed to live life. And it made me believe in ways when I had no money and no education and no health insurance and no man, and I had nothing. And it just made me believe in new ways. So the day that Isabella was born, I knew she was going to be a girl, but I didn't know that she was going to have Down syndrome. Mm-hmm. And so this big, exciting moment happens, bringing life into the world. And then in the instant that she was born and they laid her on my chest, I kind of describe it like a sci-fi moment. It was the moment where 2 things were birthed, my daughter and my faith in the fullest, because I heard the Lord's voice. He told me that she had Down syndrome, because when they're so little, you can't really tell. Mm-hmm. But he told me that she did. And it was kind of like that moment where everything just stopped in the room, and then it just kind of came back together. But it was the first time I heard his voice, so it was quite unfamiliar. Then, shortly after, it was confirmed that she did have Down syndrome. So there is a time where I know what I heard, but I didn't want to hear it, and I didn't like it. So it was the moment where I had to decide, okay, wait a minute. You have just been telling me about the most amazing things in life. You've told me who I am. I kind of almost compare it to like a new boyfriend who promises you all these things, or somebody who's going to take care of you, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, what? Like
Right.
this, what is this? No, like what is this? You said you were this, you promised me this, and so I had a choice in that moment. And I think at some point in everyone's life, we come to that choice where we have to believe what he's going to say, or we're going to go our own way. And I just sat in my hospital room that year, all those years ago, and just kind of said, okay, like if this is you, you just need to hurry up and show up and tell me, what is this all about? So that's really where my faith journey started, and my journey with Bella.
It's almost like the conversion on Saul on the road to Damascus, right? And God had to blind him and do all these things. But what's really fascinating to me, you're 20 years old at the time, and to have that level of faith and spiritual maturity, despite what you know's in front of you, you have that ability to articulate that in your mind and have that faith, that steadfast faith, to say, this is what I'm going to do. Where does that come from? I mean, you could read the book, you can talk to God, but then you have your human nature that says, do I trust fully?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing that's so interesting about all the elements of who we are as a human being. I mean, there was a spiritual part of me that knew what it had heard, because there's a place inside of all of us that only belongs to God. That's just what I believe. He's the one that when his voice goes in you, you have to respond, or you'll just keep hearing it until you respond, And he's so kind, though. It's not a horrible voice. It's not a mean one, And so I had that in me. His word is, it's alive, it's sharp, it's active. So what that means is when it went in me, it was always doing something, and in my spirit. And so there was a part of me that had the faith to believe, okay, oh my gosh, like what? But the emotional and the flesh part of it all, it was traumatizing. I mean, I was not expecting this. And when I was younger, I used to kind of describe it as the sense of trauma that it feels like is like you're going to this really exciting party, and then it became the funeral for my family, almost, But it was just one of those life-altering moments where I saw God show up in so many different ways through that encounter. And of course, Bella's 21 now, and the thousands and thousands of lives and families that have been impacted for her because of her life is just kind of a reflection, like, I didn't do anything but stuck to the promises that I believed with God and nurtured her as a mom. But her life has been an incredible demonstration for the idea that this isn't over when you have a child who looks different or born with Down syndrome. It's just the beginning of something new that you get to learn about. And so that all happened because of her.
But at 20, you didn't always think that way. It took some time to get that perspective. So what would you tell maybe women that find themselves in a similar circumstance where they have a decision to make, about how you maintain that calm? Because you mentioned the spiritual and then the flesh, and you have to somehow balance that dynamic tension almost. What advice would you give those girls that are in that decision today?
Well, I'd have to say that, and I've had these conversations a lot of times with women who are like doing blood tests and different things, and their markers are showing that maybe there's the chance to have a child with Down syndrome. And I always promise them like that it isn't the end of the world. A lot of that, the root of it is fear. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I don't want this, and I'm not equipped for this, and I can't do this, and that's just a lie. Because I had absolutely nothing in my portfolio that would support me to be a mom of a child with Down syndrome. And yet, here we are, all this time later. But I will say that being able to have a child with any disability in the United States is quite a blessing, because I travel the world and I've met people with Down syndrome and their families in every part you can think of, and most of them by Bella's age still can't talk. They are extremely cognitively low functioning. Not everyone, but people that don't have access to the services that we have. So when Bella was born and had Medicare and like special needs services, because I didn't have anything, I didn't have insurance, so I was kind of absorbing all of my resources from the government. which we've paid back greatly by now. But I just make that, I'll just put that little disclaimer.
I think so, yes.
But yeah, I mean, it was a big moment of my life where it addressed all the different elements of who I am. But I wouldn't change a thing. Like it's allowed me to sit at the tables with people having conversations about this very thing, who I never would have been qualified to sit and talk to before. And then the families that we've gotten to meet and the impact that we've been able to make, it's just, it's kind of part of the legacy part.
No, and it's almost like sometimes you got to fly at 30,000 feet versus 2 feet, because the view's totally different if you can have that perspective. And it sounds like faith was a big, important part of that. But, as I read the story, then, God's working in your heart and transforming you at the tender age of 20. And then you came across this amazing man, Albert. Mm-hmm. And, I look at today's world about how they look at sometimes transactional relationships or commitments. Mm-hmm. And it really struck me that here's a man who's pursuing his dream, mm-hmm. comes across this amazing woman who God clearly is working in her life, mm-hmm. and opens his heart up to not just one person, but 2 people. Mm-hmm. And he didn't know what the future was going to hold for him necessarily at that point. He clearly had skills and talents as a baseball player. But what was that experience like to meet someone like that in your situation, totally at that point relying upon God, faith, and working through a system, mm-hmm. with not all the resources? What was it like to meet Albert and go through that experience?
Well, Albert was just 18 when I met him, and we met in a salsa club in Kansas City that he should not have been in. But we went out for the first time at the Cheesecake Factory on the plaza in Kansas City, and that's when I let him know about Bella, and he also let me know he wasn't 21, which I'll still tease him about it. But Albert was still in high school and still learning English, and I mean he had he was just a kid. We both were really kids, but I had such a mothering, nurturing spirit about me, and it was just like kind of this perfect combination, because he really kind of needed that instruction. His mom and dad separated when he was little, and he didn't ever have her around, and so I think we just kind of we met each other where some of our greatest needs were, even as kids. Mm-hmm. So I needed somebody to nurture and take care of, and he needed the same. He needed what I had to offer. So I mean, and we went on that date and at the Cheesecake Factory, and here we are all this time, this many years later. So it's just meeting each other. At our neediest places. I think that's what happened back then, and still happens. That's
so special. And who would have known where God would have taken the relationship and the future? And so now we're sort of fast forward to today, and you've started the Pujols Family Foundation. It's really founded to promote the awareness of human trafficking, which is a scourge, certainly in the United States. We've talked a little bit about that coming in. I'm sorry, not human trafficking, sorry, my bad. The foundation is really focused on families living with Down syndrome, and then trying to promote better conditions in the Dominican Republic. So what is the biggest challenge or misconception with families living with Down syndrome?
Well, I think the misconception is that they'll always cognitively be delayed, or they won't have the same kind of opportunities, maybe health conditions. I mean, anything you can think of is going to make somebody fearful, I think of. But Pujols Family Foundation was created in 2005, and a big part of it was to create awareness about the abilities that a person with Down syndrome have, and they have all the same. When they have the same opportunities, they'll talk just like us. They'll be able to do jobs that that they're very capable of doing. But I think there is something that Bella has taught me that probably no other human can do. I mean, unless it's her, which is, patience and acceptingness, and I don't know. She's really kind of molded who I've become even in the last 21 years, because so much of my life has had to be revolved around her care or her opportunities, being her advocate, sticking up for her, fighting for her, whether it's education, the educational system, or opportunities and programs. So, and now she's an adult, so every stage of her life has kind of been this new season for us. And now she's 21, and at some point she's probably going to want to move out, so we have to go to that. So I think the greatest fear is just the unknown. Mm-hmm. But I have 4 other children besides Bella, and my second daughter, who is Sophia, is 13. Mm-hmm. I have an 18-year-old son, but boys are very different than girls and much easier to raise, I feel. But my 13-year-old daughter, is now kind of coming in. She's now a teenager, and there's so many things I'm having to address with her that I never did with Bella. So Bella was like my grace child, where, yes, I had to deal with certain things with her, but there's a lot of things that I'm not going to have to address like I will even my normal developing teenage daughter. So I think making sure that people are aware what Down syndrome is, and that anybody can
navigate through it and embrace it. Mm-hmm. So you're creating awareness, and does the foundation also instruct people on sort of the pathways or the recipes, like if they're 2 years old or they're 6 years old going into school, and how do you set that up? Because it seems to me it'd be daunting if you have a child with Down. How do you integrate them into a society with the social needs and the construct? How do you do that? So does the foundation help navigate or provide resources to say at different stages, here's what you can access?
Well, our foundation we don't often address those kinds of needs. The Down Syndrome Association and then organizations within the community offer those services. Pujols Family Foundation, we offer opportunities that the people with Down syndrome might not get. Like, for instance, we started karate classes. We have baking programs, or culinary programs. We sponsor bike camps in several communities because people with Down syndrome often don't get to learn how to ride bikes properly. So we have bike camps. We do proms. We have fishing. We have bowling. We really just kind of provide these really fun activities that can support the family. So, for instance, just an example, it might seem like nothing to have a father-son bowling opportunity. We rent the whole place out. It's fathers and sons. We usually try to bring a celebrity if it's a Cardinals player or here at the Angels. Mm-hmm. And I heard a story where there was 2 dads on a lane. Both of their sons, I think, were the same age. We tried to pair them around the same age. And they were having this incredible revelatory conversation about potty training their 9-year-olds, I think. Oh my God, how did you potty train or whatever? Maybe they were 6, I don't remember, but just the power of that connection. Where else is this guy going to have this kind of conversation about potty training his son with disability, but with another father who has a son with the same disability? So it's just, man, when you hear those little things, it is a big deal. Yeah. It's a big deal. So it really empowers me to just keep going.
How can people contribute or connect with your foundation?
So our headquarters is in St. Louis, but then we also launched a chapter out here. And we do new mothers luncheons. We do a golf tournament out here at Pelican Hill every year. We also do some events at the Angels stadiums. And so we've tried to grow a little bit more out here. They can obviously go on the website at pujolsfamilyfoundation.org and try to see how they can get plugged in or even sign up to be a volunteer when we have these kind of outings. And if they have resources or a skill or a talent, some kind of thing that they can contribute, we always are super open to that, especially if it provides an opportunity for people with Down syndrome to have a new experience.
Right. That makes sense. That's exciting. Yeah. So you have a big contingent obviously in St. Louis still.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we have lots and lots of people from the Down syndrome community who are lifelong fans.
That's wonderful. What an important initiative, and I think it gives hope. Your story gives hope to so many people at the front end, and then as it progresses downstream, that there's hope and it's a blessing and some great things. So as we transition a little bit, reading a little bit about Open Gate International, what inspired you to create Open Gate International?
So Open Gate International and Strike Out Slavery, I can kind of talk in parallel about the two because they really kind of were birthed at the same time. These two incredible opportunities happened because I started traveling. I got an invitation to go to Mexico City and visit, at the time, just an acquaintance program that they were running for human trafficking victims. They were housing young girls who needed to be rehabilitated and kept safe from a trafficking life, whether it was from the cartel or their parents or something really gnarly. They were being held with and living with my friends in a safe home. And then they were also doing work on the streets with women who were working the streets, selling themselves for sex. They were trying to create micro businesses and kind of small businesses for the ladies so that they would come off the street. So I just wanted to see, and I took a trip to Mexico in 2016. I believe it was April, and I have not stopped traveling since. So I traveled all over the world that year, just studying. I was linking up with organizations that were doing incredible work on the ground. I was taking notes. I wanted to know who was out there, what are they doing, who are the victims, who are the perpetrators, what is this? And so by the time I started, I was several countries in. In the fall of 2016, it was kind of like, okay, well, I can't not do anything about that. So I started just trying to peel back, what am I supposed to do about this, and I just thought about who I was and what I had to offer in my experiences.
Is that in your nature? You see a problem and I mean, obviously you had to connect with the problem because, there's a lot of people that idealize, I'd like to go help and do things, but you strike me as a person that once you see a gnarly challenge, part of the joy is sort of solving it, figuring out how to, even if it's just one person, it's interesting.
No, I really do have it in me. I'm so crazy. I'm maybe the only one that think like this, but like when I see something that I know something can be done about, I'm not going to be complacent about it. And that's kind of what happened in that moment. I was like, okay, wait, like I love culinary arts. I had a business at the time that was like in cookware and all these different things. And I'm entrepreneurial by DNA. I come from a line of people who were business owners and stuff. And then of course, on the baseball level, like why wasn't MLB doing anything about this? Like who's talking about this? And so I kind of had these things to think about. What I ended up doing was, there was a gal, Judy Lamborn, she's one of my best friends. She is now the executive director of Open Gate International, and she took many of those trips with me and taking notes and also, and so I was like, well, maybe we need to design a culinary, program that would offer people an opportunity to not have to be in that life, and we could really professionally train them and put them in jobs, not lead chef jobs, but line cooks and different things. But because these people are coming out of trauma or challenging backgrounds, we're going to need to have to walk alongside them as they continue to see value about themselves. And so we created a life skills program and a culinary program that are in the same institution, like the same school. And so our headquarters is in Orange County now. We've been in, our first class was January 17th of 2017. We launched here and at the Hood Kitchen. And we've been going strong ever since. And we have a life skills component, so every class, all of the students get to hear a life skills lesson. And we also do, several hours of culinary arts, and it's.
Are these people in America that you're training, or are these people you brought up from Mexico?
No. So the students are all living here. But here's the interesting thing. We thought that when we designed this program, it was going to be specifically for trafficking victims, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, all kinds of trafficking. And as we started this program, we were trying to build relationships with the community to say, hey, we have started to help walk alongside you for the people who need to be reintegrated into community. So what we found is like people who are coming out of prison, people who were trafficked, people who were out of the foster care system, domestic violence victims, homelessness, there were all of these organizations that are trying to accommodate all of these lives to get back into a sustaining, thriving lifestyle, and there just aren't enough opportunities. So we ended up designing a class that we have all kinds of different backgrounds coming in. And the idea is that every class that starts, every session that starts with the students, I will come in and kind of just give this little pep talk and introduce myself and why we're doing this for them. And I tell them oftentimes, like, your slate is wiped clean here. Whatever you do from this day moving forward is up to you. Mm-hmm. And just try to give them the opportunity. Hey, we don't judge you. You know, whatever you've done or wherever you come from, we all have a background. But that life skills piece is so incredibly important, because oftentimes, like, if I just brought you in and taught you how to cook well and got you a great job, but you were, you know, an a-hole or had a short temper or didn't know how to work well with people, you're not going to keep that job long. Right. So we really wanted to make sure that this program is about equipping the person first and giving them confidence and value and identity and all of the things that it's going to take to be just a successful human being. Right. And then we will teach you the culinary arts part, and then we advocate strongly for jobs. So usually by the time we're getting ready to graduate a class, all of the people have somewhere that they're going to walk into for work. So we've graduated 131 students to date, and we're getting ready to start another session coming up in August.
How long is the program?
Well, it used to be 8 weeks, and we've extended it to 12 weeks. And our headquarters, like I said, is here in Orange County, but we have 5 operating partner culinary schools around different parts of the world, with the 6th one on the way. And my goal is just to keep building them, because food works. You have to eat everywhere you go.
And food is love, right? It's an expression.
And food is an opportunity to bring people together. You know, you're breaking bread, you're feeding the community. And so far, it's been just mind-blowing.
So I sort of chuckle a little bit, because here you are describing, you have 5 children. It's not like you don't have a lot on your plate. And yet you've got, I think now, 3 organizations that require significant management and significant energy and significant time. And so it's just remarkable. And you seem like you have limitless energy, because if you saw 4 other problems, you'd probably figure how to start on those as well. So it's awesome on one hand, but what do you attribute is this what gives you a passion in life and a joy and the effervescent sort of perspective you have? Or how do you manage all that? Because, you know, your kids have needs, especially teenagers.
I get asked that question a lot, like a lot. Especially when I started going in the beginning. But I've been doing missionary type work and traveling, trying to help people, building latrines in Mexico when I was a teenager. Like, even from back when I was a kid, I just always wanted to serve other people in some way. If it was making a gift for them for the holidays or what, I just really can recall always being like that. So it's the difference between what you do and who you are. This isn't what I do, it's who I am.
So this is congruent with your core.
It is who I am. If I didn't travel, if I didn't find outlets to serve people, I'd probably just dry up. You know?
Interesting.
But at the same time, you're right. I have 5 kids. They have needs, parental needs, motherly needs. I have a husband who's still traveling a lot and tearing up the baseball record world, and that I need to be available for and support. So yes, it's one of those things where there's a grace, though, for the balancing act that has to be done. Mm-hmm. If it was a disaster, or when it becomes a disaster, I'll pull back. My family comes first. And if things are out of sort at home, nothing else in life I don't think will, it doesn't make sense for something out there to be prospering while the family's suffering, And so you really have to keep that in mind, because when I travel, I'm all in. They're getting my best in the moment. But when I come home, I domesticate, and they're getting my best in the moment. But it's a balancing act. I don't always do it perfectly.
I think there's a book here. I really do. I think it's a book that could inspire a lot of people, because I think a lot of people struggle with that balance and the pressures on either side of that, and how to do it successful. I think the faith component and the belief in God is a big part of that. I want to go back to the strikeout slavery, because I think this is such a scourge. It's such a big problem. And I think here we live in Orange County, and it sort of belies what's going on. Here it looks picture perfect and everything's good, and you drive around and it looks like people are okay on the surface, but just below it, you've been exposed to some things that aren't so good. And I know in America, it's a big issue. I was reading where the major states are California, Texas, and New York, and because they're sitting on the border. So where did your passion come to take on this issue head on? I mean, because there's a lot of problems in the world, let's be honest, and you could probably exhaust yourself trying to solve them, but why this particular problem? What was it that created that spark?
I think, well, strikeout slavery, was just the idea of using our baseball platform to talk about the issue. And I realized at the time in 2016, Major League Baseball was saying nothing about it. And matter of fact, they were trying to address domestic violence issues because football was having so many issues. And there's so many parallels between domestic violence and human trafficking, so you have to really kind of think about all of it.
Right.
And so what had happened during my tour around the world, and also domestically, I mean, I was at the White House, I was in the State Department, I was meeting with organizations around the country, and I could just see everybody kind of doing these little pockets of work, working tirelessly, kind of trying to do their piece. But I was like, my God, like how powerful would we be if we got everybody together? So organically, strikeout slavery grew that way. So what it is basically we started out with a big alliance of organizations. So now there's 13. That's just the national partners. But we are on our third year. And what happened, most of the people from these organizations had become my friend as I was learning in 2016. So it wasn't hard to bring them in. I mean, but these are some of the biggest organizations that exist, all the way down to like local community organizations, and might be in Kansas City or here, but
and national organizations such as MLB and
no. So Major League Baseball wasn't involved yet. Okay. So I went to Major League Baseball with Albert, and I'm like, hey guys, like I kind of just vomited my passion all over the table with them about what I had just seen, and they just weren't ready. And so, but they said you can bring back some experts that you say you have, and we'll talk. So I took back about a dozen organizations with me to that meeting, and it was a table about 3 times longer than this, with that many people sitting around it from Major League Baseball and the human trafficking world. And we had a great dialogue. It was a good conversation. We were trying to help plug in where Major League Baseball could be, pivotal in this movement, but they still weren't ready. So after I left that meeting, I said, you know what, let's just take it back to one stadium. When the Buddy Walk, which is a buddy walk for Down syndrome, started, it started with a few family members of people with Down syndrome. They went to the stadiums and did like an event at the stadiums where they just brought families in. Some were fundraisers. So I kind of took that model from the Down syndrome Buddy Walk and said, we can do this at a one stadium level.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. And we started in 2017 with just the Anaheim Stadium, brought all the organizations together, did a big family festival. It was palatable, it was powerful, it was family friendly, DJs, face painting, all kinds of things, but yet loaded with information to help try to educate the fans there. The media was huge as well. Well, then the next year we did a Nationals in Washington, D.C., and we also did another one here in Anaheim. And that was just as successful, and the numbers continued to grow. But this year we're doing 3. So we did our first one in June at the Mets.
Nice.
And Robinson Cano was our player ambassador. We're doing one in Kansas City on August 17th. And we have one of their players who is supporting our cause and our efforts there. And then here in Anaheim, we'll do our Strikeout Slavery on September 14th. But our interaction with the fans has definitely really become amazing. The way we've orchestrated how the fan interaction is as they navigate through our festival. What are they going to learn? What will they take away with? And then we had a concert that we would follow up the game with. So it's a festival, baseball game, and a concert. Perfect. And the concert was just kind of an extra way to add more voice to the issue. So for instance, the first 2 years we did Nick Jonas. And if you weren't a human trafficking interested person, or interested in the cause, if you didn't care about baseball but you love Nick Jonas, we were going to get you to the ballpark. And so at first I was a little nervous because I started watching his videos. I'm like, oh my God, like, wait, what? And then I just kind of heard the voice inside say, no, actually he's going to bring the exact audience that you need to educate. So it was awesome though.
Serenitex is focused on eliminating the biggest challenge to migraine management, namely the subjective diagnosis of migraines and standard migraine drug therapy that results in undesirable effects and unproven results. Healthcare and lost productivity costs from migraines is $78 billion a year, and employers lose 113 million lost workdays from migraines. But did you know that more than 95% of those with chronic migraines have never sought help, received a diagnosis, or been treated? Serenitex has discovered a patentable technology solution for the non-invasive detection and screening of migraines. We've tested our approach on actual migraine patients, and it works. To learn more, visit serenitex.com.
What I love about, like in business, it's all about ideas and programs and promotion and how to engage the consumer, the customer in what you're trying to educate. Who came up with all these ideas? Was it just the body, the group? Because what you're describing is pretty genius. I mean, the idea that you would have not one, but two, but three aspects that would draw people isn't always obvious.
No, that's like the way that I think. I mean, that was like, hey, if they don't like if they're not into human trafficking, but they're there for the baseball game, well, they're going to hear about the concert and the human trafficking. If they're there for the concert, then they get to hear about so it's just kind of like this trifecta, and it works. So this year, I'm super excited because Major League Baseball, for the first time, and the Players Union came together to collectively collaborate, like financial donations. Some of it went to Strike Out Slavery, and then some goes to other organizations. And they're being very proactive, realizing the capacity that they have as a brand. And I'll never stop saying it, but Major League Baseball is like no other sport in the world. 162 plus games, packing millions of people in stadiums across this country every night. Mm-hmm. Nobody else in sports does that. So that is a tremendous outlet to say, hey, we have an obligation to keep people safe. Right. They support so many other efforts, but I'm like, no, this one doesn't have a color, doesn't have a bank account, doesn't have a background. Like, it's affecting human beings, at a very high rate. And so we want people to have the awareness. So prevention and education is probably going to be the key against human trafficking with the most relevance.
Right. So I was reading that human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal industry in the world, right? We're trying to have this war against drugs, and it generates $150 billion a year. So based on all these initiatives and what you've learned, what's the biggest misperception or misconception about human trafficking?
Well, it's interesting because I think the numbers and the statistics make people go a little bonkers, and they want to argue if it's 27 million or 45 million people being trafficked or whatever. And I'm like, listen, if there's one person out there who is in a trafficking scenario, a situation, there's work for the entire community to be doing. And so this is my point. This is why I'm going after it. This is why I'm using baseball as a platform to say, hey, listen, me and a bad guy are on the starting line, and there's an innocent victim at the finish line, and whoever gets to them first wins. I want to be that person getting to them first. I want them to be equipped so that when the opportunity comes for them to be presented, with the bad guy or his scenario, they'll have a seed on the inside of them, something on the inside that will be like,
right.
This doesn't seem right.
Right.
Young people are being exposed to this stuff. I'm hearing about the stories in high schools. I'm hearing about the stories in colleges. I'm hearing about the stories in strip clubs. I'm hearing the story from the millionaire's daughter to the, poor girl coming out of the foster system. It does not matter. And it doesn't matter her color or how many zeros are in the bank account if they have one at all. It's these encounters that are happening that, bring people into the situation. So if we can do a better job at educating the community about these things, I think we have a better chance at not seeing so much of it happening.
That's perfect. So it leads to my next question, that I read that 1 in 4 of the victims are children. So how does it start in the first place? Is it, I mean, I could get a child, but young women or young adult women, how does it start? What's that slope look like?
Are you talking about just
someone who gets brought into human trafficking, how does it start for that person? And maybe it's the next question on what are the lookouts and watchouts if you're a young woman or a child?
Well, first of all, poverty is one of the biggest underlying problems. Somebody who just needs income or needs resources, they have needs that aren't being met in another way. And so sometimes this type of thing would provide a family, money. I've been around so many different countries where the families will actually sell a daughter or a son into a human trafficking situation. Now, it might be a case where they don't know that that's happening. It could have been promised to, like, hey, we're going to send your kid to school, and then it ends up not being that at all. I have seen those stories, not just heard them. I've seen that. I've seen the victims from that type of a scenario. But I think oftentimes as well, it's going to be, there's trickery. If you come into a teenage girl who meets a boy in a mall and they're just grooming the girl, trying to be the nice boyfriend for a couple months, and then it turns into something else. I've met those victims.
So
as well.
These victims are both U.S.-born citizens and OUS people.
Oh yeah, I mean it's everywhere.
It runs the gamut.
It's everywhere. It's here. It's on the other side of the world. It's happening everywhere, and I think it was happening for such a long time that it's really hard for us to play catch up. But like I kept telling, I am a one lost sheep-minded person. If I based what I did to this situation by what I saw on a global scale, I would have wrote a check, said I'll pray for you, and walked away, because it's completely overwhelming. But I'm a one lost sheep-minded person. Like, I celebrate even one life. You have to see the value of one life that you're impacting or that you're helping, come out of it and go into a life of success. You have to see the value of that, because if there's no way that you can do anything for 1,000 if you don't realize how valuable just the one is. I mean, I can take a girl who, we have incredible stories coming out of the Open Gate International Culinary Program, people who come from real suck backgrounds who have been transformed by the Life Skills Program and are equipping them with the skill. And they have a totally different life now, totally different life. And it's that one person realizing how valuable they are, not just to the community, to their families, to the community, to the economy of our community. They don't realize, because if you start plucking people out of our economic community system, eventually you get to nothing. Right. So it's the addition of trying to pull people in and get them actively working. They're so much more valuable to us thriving in our communities than they are sitting under the bridge, or like, I can never pass a person with a sign anymore. If I have the opportunity to stop, I don't care if they're going to use it's not my place. When I pass on the money, the idea is to extend love to them. Make sure I say to them, hey, God loves you, or hey, you're awesome, like, I believe in you, whatever. Just speaking into them a little bit of life.
Right.
So if I see a lot of families around here, transient families from other countries who are asking for money in parking lots, I oftentimes will double bless them and encourage them to get up off this curb or wherever they're standing, because it's like this has become complacent to us, that it's just something we're desensitized to it, or we're even cynical of these people. So it's really changed my heart, this work.
And you mentioned earlier, before we started the show, that there's two forms of trafficking. There's the economic and there's the sex trafficking. I think a lot of people in America sort of view it, the sex trafficking part. But talk to us a little bit about the economic. I mean, people that are trafficked for economic means.
Well, all of it really boils down to money at the end of the day. I think there's literally, I want to say the last number I heard is 27 different types of trafficking titles, different organ trafficking, where people are being, kidneys are being taken, or different organs and stuff. There's child trafficking, all of these different ways. I don't even know them all. That's how crazy it is. It all boils down to economy. I mean, it's all about money. A lot of it is about, it's the coercion, it's the corruption, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
It doesn't have to be that way. You know, one of a cool program that my husband and I sponsored in Cambodia, where I'm going to be going here in just a couple of weeks, to launch a program in a Muay Thai gym. So I met this incredible coach who's a 2-time national champion. He was training some young boys in a garage, literally a garage that they had transformed into this small gym. And he has 2 national champions out of this garage. But I was like, you could do better. So we've built them a state-of-the-art facility in the middle of this place that used to be riddled with foreign traffickers, adult men and young children being trafficked. So this organization's totally flipped the whole community.
In Thailand?
In Cambodia.
Cambodia.
And we built this gym because it's a preventative measure for the boys to go into gangs, to start pimping, selling drugs or whatever. And I think the last number I heard was like 12 of those boys actually live in the coach's home, because if they don't, they're vulnerable to bad scenarios. So that's how, you know, aggressive you have to be in a place like Cambodia. But at the same time, when you present these opportunities like sports, it changes everything. Everything for these boys' lives is changed. They'll never make the same kind of decisions as they grow that they would have had they not encountered this Muay Thai program.
Right.
So it's just about people being creative and using their skills and gifts and talents.
And the resources.
And the resources to extend opportunities to people who don't have them. We just need to stop being so judgmental. One of the favorite things that happened to me during all of this is I just have learned to not judge people. And I heard God's voice, and he said to me, for when you judge, you're missing out on an opportunity to be a blessing. Mm-hmm. And I don't care what that means. If it means I'm going to judge somebody's clothes, if I'm going to judge somebody's thoughts, if I'm going to judge somebody's ideas, like, just don't judge them. The person on the street with that sign that's saying, I'll work for money or I'm hungry or whatever, man, they got a story.
Yeah.
That I bet if you sat down and took the time to listen to, you'd want to give them all kinds of things,
sure.
all kinds of opportunity, because you realized that they missed out. If somebody's strung out on drugs, I promise you they've got a story, you know? And so it's just being able to just take the time to reconnect with another human being without judging them. You are going to miss out on
the blessings,
being a blessing.
Well, that's what the Bible says, I think, but for the grace of God, so go I. I mean, we could all be that person on the corner or in Cambodia or anywhere else in the world who's faced with that circumstance, which I think for most Americans can't imagine it. I mean, I know you mentioned some people down in Mexico. Some of those stories you can't even fathom. Yeah. Living in America. It's almost unreality almost. How can people get directly involved with Strikeout Slavery?
Well, strikeoutslavery.com is the website. The idea where I'm going with Strikeout Slavery, because right now we are doing the concerts, which is a lofty thing, but the idea of Strikeout Slavery is that we're going to grow into 30 stadiums. All 30 Major League Baseball stadiums will have their own alliances, city alliances, and they'll all do their own family festivals and perhaps even concerts if they want. They can turn it into whatever they want, just like the Buddy Walk has become. So if people are watching you and they don't live locally in Anaheim, wherever they are at in whatever city they are, they can start linking up with different organizations in their community, finding out how can they participate. And
spearhead this. And it sounds like MLB is now providing the access, after 3 stadiums in 4, 5, 6, to help energize some of these programs in the various cities.
Yeah, I mean, they've given us all the permissions we need. I mean, everything's branded, so it has to have permissions, photographs, all of it, and they've been extremely generous in partnering with us in that. And we're proactive for the All-Star Game. I'm sure they will be just the same for the World Series. Anywhere that you have a big sporting event, it's going to draft in this behavior, this trafficking business, and so they are starting to grow.
Kind of like the Super Bowl, I've heard.
Yeah. It's just like that. So strikeoutslavery.com is where people can really start to download some information and get more educated. But on that website, you'll find all of our partners, all of our national partners, and they can click on any of their links, see where they're at, what are they doing. Because oftentimes people don't like that human trafficking's happened, but they don't know how to get involved. And, and you kind of have to be proactive about it. You have to find where you can fit in But I have to say, the best thing you could do is educate yourself and the people in your family and your household and the people in your community and the local schools. I mean, getting people that you directly impact is going to be the most valuable thing that anybody can do at this point.
Interesting. That's important. It's a critical subject to talk about. It's a critical idea or thing to get behind, and certainly something to eradicate, for sure. Let me switch gears a little bit. Who is that person in your life that's had the biggest, most profound impact?
I was actually asked this question not long ago. Probably my mom. My parents were teenagers when I was born. They didn't marry until I was about 4, I think. But my mom's like one of the most amazing people you'll ever meet. I mean, everyone loves her. She has always had such a happy spirit. She ate moldy bread so I could have the good bread. I bought our house for that, by the way. It's always about the moldy bread. I'm like, Mom, you're lucky you ate that bread, because, but, she had such a strong faith life as a teenager having me, and she did everything she possibly could to make sure that I had a good life. And she set such an incredible example. My dad probably set the strong work ethic in me.
Mm-hmm.
My family was extremely dedicated to each other. Mm-hmm. Like, family is, very important. And I watched my dad's family kind of ride or die with each other. When the ship went down, they all went down. It was really interesting. I didn't always like it, but the commitment, you couldn't deny it, was incredible. So there were different things that I picked up from my parents that I think were probably the most pivotal of who I've become. But then Albert and I have spent a lot of time together, so I have to give him a shout out for who I've become as well.
Sure. It's funny about the legacy and talking about family, and as I look at different cultures, I'm engaged to a person from Colombia, and what I've noticed compared to the American culture that I grew up in is they're much more familiar. It's all about that. And what you said, it really rang true. And I think about America, our idea of parents is if they don't have a lot of money, then they go to homes at some level. And it's true, right? And sometimes you need to do that, but I like the sort of the model you just described, because I think that's the way it should be, because, those people created us through God, right? And they really need to be, really lifted up, because, part of this show is you don't want to lose the wisdom of those people, right? Part of what I'm trying to do is be able to share with people the perspective and insights and journey, right, and not lose it. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of that sometimes it's lost. So I appreciate the culture and that perspective. So switching gears once again, what are one or two pearls of wisdom that you could share with the audience, that if they took your advice, it could really enhance their personal and professional choices or life or what they're doing?
Well, one of the things I probably share the most with people, especially young people, is, you better know what you stand for, or you're going to fall for anything. There's way too much offered to us in this world, and it can be a blessing and it can be a curse, because, if it's religion, if it's schools, if it's jobs, if it's families, there's just so many options, And I think for me, when Albert got into the big leagues and I realized how much was coming at us all at once, I was like, whoa. I better know what I stand for, or I'm going to fall for any of this, Mm-hmm. And we had to dial in, okay, who are we going to be? Because we definitely have been called to a place we knew might happen, but never imagined so quickly.
But you're never prepared for that place, right? What you experienced.
But it's been about, we've made a lot of mistakes. There's nothing that drives me crazier than when people look into our life and think it's been all peaches and roses, because it hasn't. There's been a lot of sacrifice made. If you see somebody successful, it's because they've gone through a lot and they've made a lot of sacrifices. A lot of times people will say, oh, I wish I had your life, or I wish I had this or that. But I'm like, yeah, you wouldn't have made it through half of that storm. People want what you have, but they don't want to go through what you had to go through to get it. And that comes from, like, an athlete. It could come from a CEO of a company or whatever. There's a lot of sacrifices that people make. Time, energy, resources. Even just time traveling away for me is a huge sacrifice, but it's who I am, so I've got to, I have to do it. So I think just, and then also my faith life is most important. Loving people. Loving people is probably brought its greatest rewards.
I mean, given the epic success that you've enjoyed with Albert in your life, the humility really comes through, and that's interesting because I've known a lot of CEOs. I had lunch with a billionaire 2 weeks ago, and very successful in business, but on the personal side, not so much. And that's why I asked early on that balance thing and that perspective, and the humility part is so valuable because you can have 100 million, 200, 300, 500 million in the bank, and your personal life and your kids are just totally out of control.
Listen, you want to get yourself in check, just go to a funeral. I mean, Albert and I sat in the funeral of Tyler Skaggs yesterday, and it was a church packed with people who almost all of them, the resounding message across that church was everyone almost thought that they were his best friend. I mean, he just had such a unique connection to so many people, and the kind of person he was. He left way too early, but he left an incredible legacy, and the love that he had for his wife was repeated over and over and over again. I mean, the things that people said about him, and I have to tell you, even people who are grounded in their faith and read the scriptures and love people and try to do the right thing, it will humble you. It will make you ask yourself questions. Have I done everything I want to do? Have I loved everyone the way I want to love? And so if you need a heart check, you need to go to a funeral.
Right.
Because the billionaires and the multimillionaires, Albert and I know we don't get to take a U-Haul with us. The zeros that are in the bank are going to stay there when we go. And so I think the living a life full of love and being the best person that you can be for others is where I'm at. It's how I want to live my life.
That's awesome advice. If you can go back in time and give yourself advice, what would it be?
Don't be so stupid. No, I'm just kidding. I think patience, like I would have really tried to help teach myself about being more patient with God. Watching him make changes in my life or doing things in my life before I just jumped out and said, okay, you're not making it happen quick enough, I'll do it.
Right.
I also would have told myself to love harder. But I don't know, I mean, you learn a lot when you're not doing the right things too, and
some of the best lessons.
Yeah, so I don't know. If I knew certain things then that I know now, I wouldn't know those things now.
Right.
Yeah,
that's true. Is there anything you want to tell the audience that we haven't covered?
Oh gosh, we covered a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like there's all kinds of branches but I'm happy. Like I'm happy that I can help fulfill a call for Down syndrome. I'm happy I can talk to people about workforce reintegration, social and economic development, and the importance of it. I'm glad that I can share with people through baseball, about prevention and education of human trafficking. And if there's anything else that comes up about who I am, I'll do that too.
Right.
And I don't think that people give themselves enough credit for who they are and taking the steps to really activate who they are. They're holding dreams back, they're holding ideas back. They got books inside of them, they have ideas inside of them, they have inventions inside of them. And we are kept back in fear. And so I encourage people to kind of just step out in the faith place and maximize who God created you to be. That's my prayer every day. God, maximize who you created me to be today.
Wow. That's powerful. Thank you so much. Where could they learn more about you? Is it through the websites in the organization or?
Yeah, I mean, all of the organization websites have information about who I am. If they're really that excited about it, they can follow me on Instagram. I don't do Facebook, but they can follow me on Instagram at Deidre Pujols Adventures.
Okay.
Which my life is an adventure.
Awesome.
But yeah.
This was awesome. This was an incredible interview. Thank you so much for your insight, wisdom, and all the incredible work you're doing on behalf of so many people.
Well, I appreciate you telling stories.
Yeah.
It's good.
Thank you. That's it from Beyond. Wardrobe today provided by John Varvatos, South Coast Plaza. Go down there and check them out. They're a bunch of great people. They really connect well. You can find me on beyondbenbobo.com or on YouTube, Beyond Ben Bobo. Hit like and subscribe. Until next time, remember, becoming is better than being.
When we founded Stradling in 1975, we made a commitment to helping our clients to succeed and create opportunities for business growth throughout California and beyond. Our people share cutting-edge focus in guiding the critical transactions and disputes of our clients. And we've developed a deep bench of contacts and resources to get the job done. As trusted advisors to technology, life science, software, and medical device companies, we've invested in building our expertise, developing the best of legal talent, and the readiness to serve the business community. From our commitment to our clients to our deep involvement in the communities we serve, we understand our job is your success.